years, this database will be up and running because everybody gets why it matters so much.
Thank you. On August 30th, I wrote to you regarding Donald Trump's extensive connections to the Russian government. The letter cites to a number of troubling reports, some that suggest mere conflicts of interest, others that might suggest evidence of a crime. Last Friday, we read a new report suggesting that Mr. Trump's foreign policy advisor has been meeting with high-ranking sanctioned officials in Moscow to discuss lifting economic sanctions if Mr. Donald Trump becomes president. The same report quotes, quote, a senior United States law enforcement official who says that this relationship is being, quote, actively monitored and investigated, end quotation. Is the FBI investigating the activities of Mr. Trump or any advisor to the Trump campaign with respect to any line of communication between the campaign and the Russian government?
I can't say, sir. As I said in response to a different question from the chairman, we don't confirm or deny investigations.
Well, more generally then, is it lawful for a private citizen to enter into official government negotiations with a foreign nation?
I don't think it's appropriate for me to answer that hypothetical.
Mm-hmm. Well, in my view, our research shows that it is not. The Logan Act, 18 U.S.C. Section 953, prohibits this conduct, in my view. And finally, does Mr. Trump currently receive intelligence briefings from the FBI?
Both candidates and their running mates are offered on a regular basis briefings from the entire intelligence community. Mm-hmm. Some portion of the first briefing included an FBI segment. So, yes.
Does his staff attend those meetings as well?
No, just the candidate and the vice presidential candidate.
Mm-hmm. And finally, if a member of either
I'm wrong. I'm sorry, I got to correct what I said. Each was allowed to bring two people. And as I recall, Mr. Trump did bring two individuals with clearances to the briefing. Secretary Clinton did not. I'm sorry, I misstated that.
All right. Finally, if a member of either campaign were engaged in secret back-channel communications with a foreign adversary, could that line of communication pose a threat to national security?
Mr. Conyers, I don't think it's appropriate, given that I'm not commenting on whether we have an investigation, to answer hypotheticals that might make it look like I'm commenting on whether we have an investigation. So I'd prefer not to answer that, sir.
Well, thank you for being here today, and I thank the chairman and yield back.
Chair, thanks. The gentleman recognize the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Sensenbrenner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me express my admiration and thanks to the FBI for the professional manner and excellent work they did in the bombings that occurred in New York about a block out of my district to apprehend the suspect within, 48 hours and do everything was a very good indication of teamwork and of professionalism, and I congratulate you on that. Secondly, let me say that I think that the mud that is being thrown from the other side of this table here continually only because of the ongoing presidential election, in the case in which the FBI decided there was nothing to prosecute, it's over. And we all know nobody would be even talking about it if if Hillary Clinton weren't a presidential candidate. This is pure political maneuvering. But let me talk about a case that may pose a current national security threat to the United States, and ask you a few questions about that. In his earlier remarks, Mr. Conyers referenced an August 30th letter from the ranking members of a number of House committees. That letter asked whether the FBI was investigating troubling connections between Trump campaign officials and Russian interests, and whether they contributed to the illegal hacking of the Democratic National Committee and the Democratic National Campaign Committee. You're familiar with that letter, I take it?
Yes, I'm familiar with the letter.
I'd like to ask you a few questions. The letter said this, and I quote, on August 8, 2016, Roger Stone, a Donald Trump confidant, revealed that he has communicated with WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange about the upcoming release of additional illegally hacked Democratic documents. Mr. Stone made these statements during a Republican campaign event while answering a question about a potential October surprise. Obviously, if someone is stating publicly that he is in direct communication with the organization that obtained these illegally hacked documents, I assume the FBI would want to talk to that person. Has the FBI interviewed Roger Stone about his communications with Julian Assange or his knowledge of how WikiLeaks got these illegally obtained documents?
I can't comment on that.
Mr. Stone stated that he has knowledge about upcoming leaks of additional illegally hacked documents. Has the FBI asked him about those communications?
I also can't comment on that.
Because it's an ongoing investigation?
I don't want to confirm whether there is or is not an investigation. That's the way I answered Mr. Conyers' questions as well.
Director Comey, the FBI acknowledged in public statements and testimony that it was investigating Secretary Clinton's use of a private email server, and that was while the investigation was still ongoing. Now you can't comment on whether there's an investigation. Is there a different standard for Secretary Clinton and Donald Trump? If not, what is the consistent standard?
No, our standard is we do not confirm or deny the existence of investigations. There's an exception for that when there is a need for the public to be reassured, when it's obvious, it's apparent given our activities, public activities, that the investigation is ongoing. But our overwhelming rule is we do not comment except in certain exceptional circumstances.
Aren't there exceptional circumstances when close officials to a candidate of a major political party for the United States says publicly that he's in communication with foreign officials and anticipates further illegal activity?
I don't think so.
Mr. Trump's campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, resigned after failing to disclose his role in assisting a pro-Russian party in Ukraine. The Associated Press reported, and I quote, Donald Trump's campaign chairman helped a pro-Russian party in Ukraine secretly route $2.2 million in payments to two prominent Washington lobbying firms in 2012, and did so in a way that effectively obscured the foreign political party's efforts to influence U.S. policy. Has the FBI interviewed Mr. Manafort about his failure to disclose his work for this foreign government, as federal law requires?
I have to give you the same answer, Mr. Nadler.
Has the FBI interviewed Rick Gates, who reportedly still works for the Trump campaign, about his involvement in this scheme?
Same answer, sir.
Director Comey, after you investigated Secretary Clinton, you made a decision to explain publicly who you interviewed and why. You also disclosed documents, including notes from those interviews. Why shouldn't the American people have the same level of information about your investigation of those associated with Mr. Trump?
I'm not confirming that we're investigating people associated with Mr. Trump. In the matter of the email investigation, it was our judgment, my judgment, and the rest of the FBI's judgment that those were exceptional circumstances where the public needed transparency.
Okay, my final question is the following. You investigated Secretary Clinton's emails and so forth, everything we've been talking about. You concluded, I believe quite properly, that there was nothing to prosecute. And you announced, in my opinion, quite properly, that you had investigated it and that there was nothing there, or there was nothing to prosecute. That was proper. But having announced, when a prosecutorial agency announces that we've investigated so-and-so and we've decided to prosecute because, or we've investigated so-and-so and we've decided not to prosecute because, why is it appropriate for that prosecutorial agency to go further and say, even though we've decided not to prosecute, we still think this person did this, that, or the other thing, and it was proper or improper? Why is it proper for a prosecutorial agency to characterize your opinion of the propriety of the actions of someone whom you have announced that you have decided there's nothing criminal and shouldn't be prosecuted?
That's a very hard decision. That's why it's the exception to the rule. You do risk damaging someone who isn't convicted. The judgment I made in this case is, given the unusual, in fact, I hope unprecedented nature of this investigation, that it was appropriate to offer that transparency. Not an easy call. I really wrestled with it, but I think on balance it was.
Let me just say, before my time expires, that I think, and I'm just talking for myself, that that was highly inappropriate, that having determined that there was nothing to prosecute and having announced that quite properly, for a prosecuting agency, for the Department of Justice to comment with comments that will be looked upon as authoritative, that what she did was right or wrong or good or bad, is not the appropriate role of a prosecuting agency, and risks, not in this case perhaps, but risk. And I talk really now because of the future. I don't want to see that happen again with regard to anybody, because it puts anybody who did not commit a crime, who you have determined, you or the Justice Department, whoever is determined, did not commit a crime, or there's no evidence sufficient to prosecute, puts them at the mercy of the opinion of an individual or individuals within the prosecuting agency, and that's just not right under our system. I yield back.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Smith, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Comey, thank you for those examples of the FBI's good work in your opening statement. I think we all appreciated what the FBI has done. My first question is this: would you reopen the Clinton investigation if you discovered new information that was both relevant and substantial?
It's hard for me to answer in the abstract. We would certainly look at any new and substantial information.
Yeah. In general, and let's impersonalize it, in general, if you discovered new information that was substantial and relevant, you would reopen an investigation, would you not?
Again, even in general, I don't think we can answer that in the abstract. What we can say is if any investigation, if people have new and substantial information, we'd like to see it so we can make an evaluation.
Okay. Let me give you
some words before you've even completed your investigation. You were aware that he'd said that, weren't you?
Yes, I saw those reported in the press.
Okay. And finally, it just seems to me here that there was clearly a double standard going on. Like, for example, if anybody else had done this, like a soldier or a serviceman who did virtually the same thing, they would have been prosecuted and were, but not Hillary Clinton. And that's a double standard, and that's not the way it's supposed to work in America. And I'm out of time. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I disagree with that characterization, but
The gentleman is permitted to respond.
I don't think so. I actually think if we were to recommend she be prosecuted, that would be a double standard, because Mary and Joe at the FBI or some other place, if they did this, would not be prosecuted. They'd be disciplined. They'd be in big trouble in the FBI. If you did this, you would not be prosecuted. That wouldn't be fair. Okay.
The time of the gentleman has expired. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, for 5 minutes.
Chairman, thank you so very much. Many Americans have come to trust Hillary Clinton as a dedicated, committed public servant. But I believe it's important as we address these questions. Let me make one or 2 points. My colleagues have already made it, and I look forward maybe to coming back to Washington to dealing with the potential Russian intrusion on the election system. I'm not asking you, Director, at this time. And also the issue of connecting the dots as we deal with terrorism across America. But I do want to acknowledge Eric Williams, an outstanding detailee to this Judiciary Committee. Thank him for his service. And I want to thank the SAC in Houston, Mr. Turner, for helping us in the shooting that occurred in Houston, as you well know, that gave us a great deal of fear.